I said earlier the fall of Afghanistan is not just a political or security defeat for the West, it's also a cultural defeat. For a start, check the Taliban men, all men by the way, who took over the presidential palace in Kabul. I don't think there's a single face mask there between them with this virus raging in Afghanistan too. Well, not that I recommend what they're doing, of course. I'm just pointing out that these men are not obsessing about some small threat to their health. They're looking at a bigger picture. But for me, the difference really is best summed up in a couple of videos I'll show you. First, here's the top general in the United States, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, 3 weeks ago, only 3 weeks ago, dismissing the possibility of exactly what happened just yesterday.
The Afghan security forces have the capacity to sufficiently fight and defend their country. A negative outcome, a Taliban automatic military takeover, is not a foregone conclusion.
Now, this happens to be the very same general who seemed much more interested in fighting another war, identity politics, in battling white supremacy, white rage, etc. Something that he actually wanted the US military academy to now teach.
The United States Military Academy is a university, and it is important that we train and we understand, and I want to understand white rage, and I'm white.
And indeed, this bloke's army has been running recruitment ads focused on race, on hiring minorities, aimed at, for instance, the children of same-sex parents.
This is the story of a soldier who operates your nation's Patriot missile defense systems. It begins in California, with a little girl raised by two moms. Although I had a fairly typical childhood, took ballet, played violin, I also marched for equality.
And meanwhile, let's look again at the ragtag army that defeated the United States. Do any of them look bothered by their lack of diversity, bothered about their gender, wondering if they might be bi or non-binary, filled with shame at their maleness and their colour? Joining me is Brendan O'Neill, editor of the online magazine Spike. Brendan, lovely to talk to you. Look, it's hard for me not to see this as a battle between proud people prepared to die for their beliefs, however backward you might think them or whatever, and cowed people on the other side who are not even sure what they believe.
Absolutely. I mean, firstly, this is an extraordinary geopolitical humiliation for the United States and for NATO. People are comparing it to Saigon in 1975. I actually think it's worse. It's worse because it was not really external pressures that defeated the US. They kind of defeated themselves. That's what's happened here. And I think those videos you showed are a very good example that we're in a situation of twiddling our thumbs while Rome burns. So you have the rise of extraordinarily regressive Islamist movements in Afghanistan and elsewhere. And the greatest minds of the West are thinking about how to make the army trans-inclusive, or what your gender might be. Or the British Army. The British Army a couple of years ago advertised for snowflakes. I mean, the posters literally said, snowflakes, the army wants you and it wants your compassion. And I was thinking yesterday, what must the Taliban have thought when the great British Army was advertising for snowflakes, or when the American military became obsessed with white rage and white anger and critical race theory? They're laughing at us. That's what they're doing. And this is a cultural clash between a West that doesn't know what it stands for and a regressive Islamist movement that really does know what it stands for.
Oh yes, for a while we were running recruitment ads for our army. You joined the army, you went to help people, you helped them in a disaster, you picked them up, you looked after the kids. No, an army's there to go overseas and shoot people if necessary to defend us, or to defend us at home, again by shooting people. Now, the other thing that we don't seem to have done, Brendan, is they've offered the Afghan people some compelling vision to fight for, the personal freedom that we hope that the new Afghanistan would represent. We poured in the aid, But it seems to me this is an example of the great maxim that man does not live by bread alone. And it seems that many in Afghanistan would rather be poor and hardline Muslim than rich and Western and liberal. Now, is that one of the problems here, that we don't have a vision that really sings in that sort of country?
Absolutely. But I think that's right, we don't. And lots of Afghans just do not buy into whatever we promoted to them. But what's really even more tragic than that, in a sense, is that we don't even have a vision that many people in the West buy into. You know, I was remembering recently that the war on terror, when it was launched in 2001, which began with the Afghan war, that was called Operation Enduring Freedom. But how many people in the West really believe in freedom today? I mean, who, truly believe in freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of association, political freedom? Not many, certainly not many in the new elites. So I think what's happened here is that firstly, the Afghan people, many of them, have said, look, we don't want this kind of freedom that you're offering to us. And that has completely fallen apart. But at the same time, what does it say about America that it launches this 20-year war called Operation Enduring Freedom and then kind of gives up and runs away and turns its back on its former allies in Afghanistan?
Terrible.
It tells us that this is why this really ratifies America's geopolitical decline. It now looks like a nation
so true,
that doesn't
Brendan.
really
It
believe
is so
in freedom.
true. And how can we sell freedom when in the meantime we're acting like the Taliban ourselves with a cancel culture? Brendan O'Neill, thank you so much indeed for your time.